is I believe he's stuck somewhere between his homestead and the studio. I believe in pretty horrendous traffic, so hopefully he'll be able to join us for half time. That's if he gets to see any of the game whatsoever. But until at least kickoff, I think you'll be stuck with me and Liam. So let's
what you're saying, Laura, is that he's less than 7 miles away, but more than 1 mile away. Is that what you're telling me?
I would guess that's probably about right. Yeah.
Okay. Just so we're clear.
Yeah. I mean, but hopefully he'll cover those last 7 miles really, really quickly. Like they'll just come one after the other.
Aye, maybe 3 in 6 minutes if he's lucky, you know.
Yeah. Hopefully, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, we'll get back to talking what you're all here to talk about. Let me just see if I can pull this up for you. We've got the Celtic starting lineup for the home match against Hibs for today. So, in goal, it's Joe Hart. We've got Tony Ralston at right back, Carter Vickers and Yents in the middle, Bernabe at left back, Moy, O'Reilly and Hatate taking up the midfield, and a front three of Forrest, Haksabanovic and Giakoumakis. I was getting too excited with myself there talking about who was next. Liam, your thoughts on the lineup? What you expected, or any surprises there for you?
No, I mean, to be honest, I expected both Kyogo and Maeda to kind of maybe get a rest today and not necessarily start. They both come in for a bit of criticism during the week. Not all of it warranted, in my opinion, but some of it warranted. So on form, you've got to say Giakoumakis is deserving of a start because he's done well whenever he's played. It's an interesting team. It's good to see Bernabe getting more game time because I liked what I saw of him last week. Certainly offers more in an attacking sense than Greg Taylor, but I think Greg Taylor's definitely a better defender. But a game like today, we're at home. You know, it's a game we should win reasonably comfortably, so we're going to put out a more attacking team. So in that sense, Bernabe makes sense.
Yeah, I guess starting at the back, a particular. Well, I don't know that I would qualify it as a surprise now, but the inclusion of Ralston, I've not heard of anything affecting Juranovic too negatively. He is on the bench, so I presume he's fully fit to play. He could have been selected from the start, but anything to read into the selection of Ralston, or do you think that's Ange just, rotating as we expected him to do with the number of games that we've been playing?
No, I think it's just the case that Juranovic is our number one right back, so he will start the European games, and if we have a particularly hard European game, Ralston will come in. And I think that games like this midweek game, it's tiring enough just to play a team like that, but to play and work really hard and then lose, it feels all the more tiring if you lose. So I think, the likes of Maeda and Juranovic and Kyogo are probably still feeling it a bit. So putting them on the bench today I think it's exactly what the manager should do.
Yeah, I would be in agreement with that. We're just going to get some comments coming in. Paddy Lavery says, afternoon all from a Baltic Ardoyne. It's not much better here in Glasgow. I don't know what the temperature's like over in Japan, Liam.
I've actually got my air conditioner on just now. It was a wee bit warm today.
In the words of Chewing the Fat, ooh, air conditioning. Anyway.
Oh, we've got running water as well. You'd be amazed.
Oh, fantastic. Mappy says hello from Laos. Now, I'm not the most geographical of people. Liam, I don't know if you know exactly where Laos is or if Mappy can inform us. I'm wanting to say, no, I was going to say Nigeria, but that's Lagos, isn't it?
Aye.
Aye.
Laos, as it's pronounced, is
okay.
is sort of between China and Vietnam,
okay.
kind of next to Thailand, in that sort of area.
Okay, I want to say over your neck of the woods, but given my geographical sense, it could be still thousands of miles from you, I'm sure.
Well, that's the thing. I remember a few years ago there was a bit of a protest movement kicked off in Hong Kong, and people were texting me saying, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Mate, I'm in Tokyo. I'm fine."
Magnet67 says, afternoon Acsom team, glad to see Forrest start. Hopefully should use his experience to help us a comfortable win. We'll talk about Forrest in a little bit. And then we've got Gav Johnston, a few changes, but still strong. Would have liked to see Abelgard instead of Moy. With that said, we'll go on to the midfield, Liam. So for just for anybody who missed at the start, I'll just bring it back up just now. So the midfield is Moy, O'Reilly and Hatate. We'll talk about that selection of Moy. He's had a bit of an up and down few weeks. Had a particularly poor performance, I believe, against St Mirren, the game that we lost. Some fans questioning what he brings to the team. Others happy to see him, brought on towards the end of a game to sure out a victory. But what's certain is that Ange seems to value him. Were you surprised to see him, or as the listeners, as the viewer said, I should say, were you expecting to see Abelgard finally make a start for us?
No, I think Abelgard's still a week or two away from being ready to walk into the team. Could well be up for a cameo appearance in the second half, but I think for the moment they're both players that we expect to play a similar role in the team, with Kalmak being out, and Moy is just there on fitness at the moment. Once Abelgard is fully match fit, then it becomes a question of which one of them do we think's better. Mm-hmm. And we've not seen enough of Abelgard yet to make that judgment. So at the moment, Moy's there on merit.
Yeah, bearing in mind what I said about Ange seeing something in him that he obviously likes, which I understand, and being somebody who kind of, if Ange says jump, I would say how high. It's one thing I'm kind of struggling to see exactly what it is that he brings to the team. What are the strengths you think Moy brings to the team, and especially in a situation where he's starting the game today, what do you think he can provide us?
Moy is one of those players who kind of does the simple things, but does them very effectively. Mm-hmm. You've got O'Reilly and Hatate as two flair players playing in front of him. Yeah. But Moy kind of does the graft, if you like, to allow them to do their more skill-based stuff. He very rarely wastes a pass. If you look at the statistics, I'm sure his pass completion percentage is very, very good. Yeah. Plays good balls from deep, which is something that we don't really have that much of in the team. Carter Vickers can do it now and again as well, but I think Moy brings that. I just think that if you're going to have two midfielders as attacking as O'Reilly and Hatate, you need somebody sitting that wee bit deeper, but who can still pick out a good probing forward pass, and to me, that's what Moy does.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think he, the one thing that frustrates me about him, or about people's perception of him, is there's been in my opinion, a kind of lazy viewpoint that he is the new Scott Brown, and with all due respect, I think that's due to his follically challenged napper, shall we say, more than anything else. And I think I think he's maybe a little bit more of a mobile player, certainly, than Scott Brown was to the end of his career. He's certainly not as hard a tackler as Scott Brown was, so I think it is a slightly different element that he does bring. But it's interesting that you say that, because I was talking to my uncle, who I was watching the game with at Leipzig on Tuesday, and he was talking about the fact that we missed a bit of a Scott Brown influence, somebody who wouldn't, in his words, wouldn't let the opposition away with anything. Now, I'm not sure that's the way I want us to play football, but do you think he maybe had a point in that, that is something that we missed, that a Moy, an Abelgard, even a McGregor maybe doesn't bring us?
Look, Scott Brown is Scott Brown, all right? Doing what he does, or what he did for Celtic, rather, was unique. It's saying that, he's not as good as Scott Brown. That's a bit like saying, well, Haksabanovic isn't as good as Jimmy Johnson. It's not really a fair comparison.
Listen. I wouldn't put Scott Brown and Jimmy Johnston in the same situation, but I know what you're saying.
In terms of the impact that they had over a long time at the club, right?
Yes, fair.
I'm not talking about ability. I'm talking about status amongst the supporters, right?
Yeah, fair.
For people of our generation and a bit younger who maybe don't remember seeing Jimmy Johnson play in the flesh, it's guys like Henrik Larsson, Chris Sutton, Lubo Moravcik, and more recently Scott Brown that are the big ones that really stand out to you. Mm-hmm. Icons, as it were. And you can't replace an icon in 10 minutes. It's the same thing as like when Greg Taylor came in, everyone was expecting him to be the new Kieran Tierney. And it's not going to happen. Kieran Tierney's a £25 million defender, one of the best fullbacks in Europe, who is probably going to go for a hell of a lot more next time he moves on. And that's not Greg Taylor. That's no slight on Greg Taylor. That's just the realities of football economics,
Yeah, that's all fair, and I think the realities of football economics is something that we're seeing laid bare, in the Champions League, like you say, that we can afford to spend a few million on a player, but we can't afford to spend 30, 40 million on a player, which in the top 5 leagues at least is kind of the going rate for a almost pretty average player these days. You're having to go up approaching 60, 70 million before you start really approaching the real top class players. So it's going to be difficult in any climate to keep up with that. But it's interesting nonetheless. Another player to look at in the lineup that we were talking about during the Friday Bulletin when I was on with Jim and Alan Morrison yesterday was Reo Hatate. One of those players that, I have professed my love for Reo Hatate till the cows come home. I think the guy is a supremely talented footballer and offers us something that I don't think any other player in the squad offers us in terms of the risks that he takes with passes. The disadvantage with that obviously is if the risks don't pay off, he can look as if he's had a pretty ordinary game, which was the case against Leipzig on Tuesday. Pleased to see him in from the start, if only just to see him get back into his rhythm and things like that. Are you expecting to see that from him today?
Yeah. Hatate, like you say, again, not comparing them in terms of ability, but comparing their contribution, reminds me a bit of Lubo Moravcik in the sense that, Lubo could, on his day was probably the most skillful player in the Celtic team at the time. I'd say in terms of raw skill, even better than Henrik Larsson, in my opinion, right? But there were games where he would just fade because the wee tricks that he was trying weren't coming off, or other players weren't reading his passes or his movement, and that can frustrate players like that. And you see that with Hatate sometimes. He plays a really good ball or makes a really good run, but his teammates don't read it, or he tries something and it gets intercepted or it doesn't come off. And with flair players thrive on being risk takers, as you say.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to accept as fans that, it's not always going to come off. But, hopefully 1 in every 5 or 1 in every 10 of them ends in a spectacular goal. So, if you keep that number up, you can get away with it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's something that we need to appreciate about him, and I think he. I think personally, I was shocked to hear what Ange said about him. I can't remember exactly when it was, but the fact that he's only in he's maybe second or his third year as a professional footballer because of the way things work in Japan, and higher education is prioritised even in careers where, it wouldn't maybe otherwise be in other cultures and things. So the fact that he's only 2 or 3 years into his career makes you wonder, A, where he would have been had that not been the case and had he had the normal route. But the other thing is, where he could go given how much he's achieved in that short space of time. So it'll be interesting to see. Looking at the front line, a very unfamiliar front line in terms of, if you want to say Jota, Kyogo, and perhaps Abada or Maeda would be the kind of standard front line. Maeda's come in for a little bit of stick because of some recent performances. Kyogo similarly because of a string of missed chances, and Jota obviously suffering from an injury that we hope he will be back from this week. But before we talk about Kyogo and Maeda specifically, the front line there, pleased to see Forrest in there, if only because I think myself and others were relatively harsh on him at the beginning of the season, saying, we don't know what he can continue to contribute because it's clear recent injuries and things have affected him as a player. But he came on and he had an encouraging performance against Leipzig during the week. He's had a couple of performances of that ilk. Are you pleased to see him in from the start today?
Yeah, for me, James Forrest is always a guy that should be part of your squad at the very least. Not a guaranteed starter, but I think a guy who always has something to contribute and can make an impact. Games like, for example, the St Mirren game, where the whole team is completely flat, that is a type of game where someone like Forrest has the potential to step up and do something a wee bit different. I remember some of the memorable goals he scored in Europe and against that mob from across town down the years. He's a guy who can perform and produce when we need something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I think that's true. And if there's one thing you can say about James Forrest, you can point to a number of big goals that he's scored over the years, like you say. Especially in Europe, he seems to come up with them as well. So it's maybe been a shame that he hasn't been a more regular starter for us, because maybe he would have come up with those. But it'll be interesting to see what he does from the start today, with a chance to make a real impact. Haksabanovic is another interesting one. Obviously, with a slight change of shape that we've had in recent weeks, he's come in since Callum McGregor got injured and taken on the number 10 role. That isn't what I'm led to believe is his natural position. He is more of a wide player, and I think the lineup suggests that he will go back to being a wide player today. Were you disappointed to see that perhaps he won't be playing that number 10 role given the impact that he's had there, or are you happy to see him going back out to his more natural position?
I'm just glad he's on the pitch, because I think the guy's sensational. It's obviously, Maeda is my guy. I'm a big fan of Maeda, but on current form, Haksabanovic warrants a place ahead of him. That's undeniable. So I think that it's good that Haksabanovic is there. I'll be interested to see what he does there, because I thought he was very effective in the number 10 role. In what was not a great team performance, he was one of the standouts. Talking about the St Johnstone game, but I think that he's one that could in time become as much of a fan favourite as the likes of Jota or Kyogo. I see him at that level, and the more he plays, the better he seems to get. So having him starting a game today can only be good for him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And obviously Giakoumakis up front, I don't know that we need to say much more about him, other than I think he's, about as natural a goal scorer as anybody we've got in the team, and hopefully we can see him provide that today.
Remind me again, what's Giakoumakis' squad number?
I'm trying to think.
It's not one. It's not one. It's
7.
7. There you go. 7. Aye.
Yeah.
Right.
A kind of magical number, I have to say. Kind of magical number.
Unlucky for some, but
Well, depends on your perspective, obviously. But listen, I'm going to depart from the usual narrative of the pre-match build-up and say this. I was on with Mr. Stato himself, Alan Morrison, yesterday, and I could listen to the man endlessly because I'm a bit of a geek like that. I know some people say that spreadsheet approach to football is not the way that they want to take it in, and certainly when I'm watching the game I don't do that, but I certainly am interested in whether the stats back things up, whether the stats contradict with what you feel you've seen on the pitch. And so I love having him on the Friday Bulletin and firing questions at him. Only that man could tell me that a question that I posed to him was a poorly researched question, never mind whether his answer was poorly researched. But I'll tell you the question I asked him yesterday. He was quite outspoken about the fact that he thinks this is going to be a difficult game for us. And given the fact Hibs have won 4 out of their last 5, they're in 3rd place, they're, one of the most informed teams in the country at the moment, I fully appreciate that. But I did a little bit of digging and asked him about whether he felt that the number of sending offs that have been issued against the opposition of Hibs had an impact on the game. And he quite rightly pointed out that, that's all in context. It depends whether the sending off for the opposition was made in the first minute, whether it was made in the last minute, what the situation was in the game at the time. So I thought I would look into it, and it's an interesting reading. So I went back right to the start of the season. We've only played 10 games. Hibs have had a sending off in the opposition team 5 times so far out of those 10 games. So the first game that happened in was St Johnstone. They got a man sent off in the 58th minute, and Hibs took until the 90th minute to score. They had, amazingly enough, John Lundstrom get sent off for Rangers in the 68th minute, at which point I believe Rangers were 2-1 up, and it took that sending off to allow Hibs to come back into the game with a goal by Josh Campbell in the 90+ second minute. They had a sending off, or Kilmarnock had a sending off playing against them in the 11th minute, and they scored in the 12th minute. Motherwell had a sending off in the 56th minute, and Ryan Porteous put Hibs ahead to get a 1-0 victory in the 67th minute. And then the last one was our very own Liam Scales, who got himself sent off in the 44th minute, presumably from a penalty, because and gave away a penalty, because I see Martin Boyle scored in the 45th minute with a penalty, and then Josh Campbell scored 2 goals in the second half, and that was with them having been down 1-0 to Aberdeen at the time that the sending off was made. So I wish I had put this research in with Alan, because I think I could have come back at him there. But I guess what I'm saying there is, do you think with the context of that, with anything that you've seen of Hibs so far this season, is their form as revelationary as we might think it is, or do you think that those sending offs and the run of good fortune they've had in that way is maybe a bit more of an indication of why they are where they are?
Well, first of all, knowing what I do about Scottish referees, I'm disappointed I didn't have a fiver on a Celtic red card today. It's a tricky one, because players can only respond to the situation that they're in, and the fact that Hibs went on to win or get points in those games shows that the players played well through a certain set of circumstances. Now, at the end of the day, I've seen games where, like, a team get 1 or 2 players sent off and they still win 2 or 3-0. It doesn't. A red card doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go on and get something from the game, because there's been numerous games with Celtic down the years, particularly against Rangers, where we've had players sent off and we've still managed to get a result. And going the other way, there's been games where there were players who didn't get sent off and should have, but ultimately it didn't impact the result anyway. So no, I think Hibs are where they are now because they're playing good football. The fact that they've had some good fortune in terms of cards is a contributing factor, but I don't think it's the overriding factor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I just thought it was a very, very interesting thing because, as most of us do, I looked at the table and thought, Hibs really look on form here. They've got 4 victories out of 5 and kind of wasn't going to look into it any further than that. And then when I clicked on it and saw these red cards everywhere, I was kind of like, I wonder if that's got more of an impact. And I think, to be fair to Alan, when he asked me to clarify exactly the context of the red cards, it does, in my mind, prove that they've had a significant impact on the games where they've occurred. But like you say, they've still had to go on and win other matches, or at least get points out of other matches. Although now that I'm saying that, I'm looking at the table, and their wins have only come in those 5 matches where the sending offs have occurred. They've only got 2 draws on top of that, and then lost the other 3. So it'll be interesting to see how things pan out today. If we get a man sent off, then as you say, there might be more to discuss there than first meets the eye. 5 minutes to go till kickoff. I will get your prediction just before we go off air for the kickoff. But I wanted to give you a bit of an opportunity to discuss, particularly Daisen Maeda. Now, I know he's getting a lot of stick, some of it warranted, some of it not. You have an extended history of watching him. First of all, are we seeing the best of him? And if not, why not?
Okay, are we seeing the best of him? No. Does he deserve to be the whipping boy that he is at the moment? Also, absolutely not. Now, the thing with Maeda is that, again, a bit like Hatate in the sense that he's a guy who will press, he'll take players on, he'll try and do something. And if that something doesn't come off, then, it reflects badly on him. Now, people are saying, oh, he's missed so many chances, whatever. Well, he must have a pretty good striker's instinct if he's getting into those positions in the first place. People don't think about that. His work rate it's a bit of a cliche to keep talking about it, but that is a massive factor in his game. It's why Ange likes him as a player. He has an engine unlike any other player in the Celtic team. He needs a goal. He needs a goal to get his confidence up, and then he'll be flying. Same thing happened when he was at Yamaga, which was the first club I saw him play for. He went about maybe 3 or 4 games without scoring, and you saw his head go down. But then he duly scored 2 in the next game, and that was him away again. It's difficult to say because his main attribute is providing assists. Although he scored 16 goals in the J League last season, he set up, I think, even more than that. And he was playing as part of a front 2, which you don't do at Celtic. Same when he plays for Japan. He often plays either through the middle or as part of a front 2, which is different from what he does here. And that's why, as I've said before, he gets a game for Japan ahead of Kyogo. And that's another thing which, now, I am not trying to have a go at Kyogo here because, I love the guy, right? But I do think it's a bit unfair that everybody's getting ripped into Maeda and Kyogo was kind of getting a free pass when I think both of them are underperforming at the moment equally. Let's be consistent, guys, right? Let's move away from this fanboy thing, which fans of all clubs do, where you just get it in your head that you don't like a player and you just keep ripping him a new one, regardless of how badly the whole team are playing, right? We've seen it before with Greg Taylor. We've seen it with we saw it with Joe Hart a couple of weeks ago. It's like, just back the team, all right? You can criticise players by all means, but see when they're out on that pitch, giving us and you can never deny that Maeda gives anything less than 100%. It's not fair to give them abuse while they're trying their best. By all means, critique the performance afterwards. But the amount of times that people are just like, during games, people are saying, "Oh, he's crap. He's whatever." Just shut up and support the team, okay?
Yeah, no, I think you're echoing the sentiments of Jim yesterday, who said pretty much the same thing. He wants to just see us encouraging the team, and I mean, obviously, I totally agree with that. But we are here to, pick the bones of the game, and I'm sure we'll have positive and negative things to say about the players at halftime and at full time. Hopefully more positive than negative, but we'll see. Just before I get your prediction, Paul Cockwell, who is a regular Acsom viewer but a noted Hibby in the comments, says Hibs are that good that they make other players get red cards. You may well be right, Paul. We will wait and see if that's the case. I'll certainly hope it isn't today. So before we leave you, I'm going to give you my prediction. I'm going to be a bit conservative today. I'm going to go 2-1. I think it might be a bit of a nervy affair, but I think we'll take it in the end. Are you a bit more positive than me on that score, Liam?
I'm going to say 3-1. I think it will be cagey, but I think we'll get a couple of goals in the second half, and that will put us out of sight safely.
I certainly hope so. And with that said, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the first half. I hope it is as positive as we want it to be, and we will see you at halftime just to go over exactly what has happened. Thanks for joining me, Liam, and we'll see you all very, very soon.